The night Sarah Davis's life ended, it wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no violence, just her husband opening the front door and pointing toward the street like she was a stranger who'd overstayed her welcome. 40 degrees, November rain coming down in sheets. Midnight in Charleston's wealthiest neighborhood, where the houses sat behind gates and the lawns stretched like golf courses. Sarah stood on the porch wearing nothing but the silk nightgown she'd been changing into when Daniel came home, her bare feet pressed against wet concrete, her pregnant belly, 36 weeks, the baby they'd named Emily, already kicking in distress, stretched the fabric so tight she could see the outline of her daughter moving beneath the silk. Behind her through the window she watched Melissa Clark walk through what used to be Sarah's living room. The blonde moved with the confidence of ownership, barefoot, wearing the white bathrobe with SED embroidered on the pocket. Sarah's initials, Sarah's robe, Sarah's house. Not anymore. Daniel. Sarah turned back to her husband, the man she'd loved for 7 years, the man whose child was 4 weeks from being born. Please, whatever I did, we can fix it. Just tell me what's wrong. He didn't even look at her, just stood in the doorway with one hand on the knob, the other holding her Louis Vuitton suitcase. The anniversary gift he'd given her 3 years ago, now sitting in a puddle at the bottom of the porch steps. There's nothing to fix. I'm done. His voice was flat, bored, like he was canceling a subscription he no longer needed. Melissa's moving in tonight. You're moving out. It's simple. Simple. 7 years of marriage. A daughter due in 4 weeks. Simple. Sarah's brain couldn't process it. She kept looking for the punchline, the camera. The moment Daniel would laugh and say he was kidding, testing her, proving some point she was too pregnant and tired to understand. But he just stood there, waiting for her to leave, getting annoyed that she wasn't moving fast enough. I'm 8 months pregnant. The words came out quiet, disbelieving. It's midnight. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Daniel checked his watch. Expensive, Swiss. A Patek Philippe she'd helped him pick out for his 40th birthday last year. Your father lives in Mount Pleasant. 20-minute drive. Call him. Walk. I don't care. Just get off my property. My property. Not our property. Not the house they'd bought together, painted together, filled with furniture they'd chosen on weekends, browsing through design showrooms in downtown Charleston. My property. The rain intensified. Sarah's nightgown was already soaked through, clinging to her belly, her hair plastered to her face. She couldn't feel her toes anymore, couldn't feel much of anything except Emily's increasingly frantic kicks. A car passed on the street. Headlights swept over the scene. Pregnant woman, wet nightgown, middle of the night. The car didn't slow, didn't stop, just kept going like this was normal, like wives got thrown out in the rain all the time. Maybe they did. Maybe Sarah was just the last to know. She tried one more time. Daniel, I love you. Whatever's wrong, whatever happened, we can... I never loved you. He said it without emotion, matter of fact, the way you'd tell someone the time or give directions. I needed access to your trust fund. I got it. Now I don't need you anymore. Melissa and I have been together since before our wedding. This, he gestured vaguely at Sarah at the house at their entire marriage, this was always temporary. The words landed but didn't make sense, like hearing a foreign language. The sounds were familiar, but the meaning wouldn't compute. Before the wedding. 3 years. While Sarah planned their future, Daniel was planning her exit. Now leave. Daniel's hand tightened on the doorknob. Or I call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Trespassing. In her own house. Her own life. The door slammed. The deadbolt clicked. Sarah heard it slide into place with a finality that made her knees buckle. She stood there for maybe a minute, maybe an hour. Time had stopped making sense. The cold seeped into her bones. The rain soaked through every layer until there was no dry left. Emily kicked hard enough to hurt. Sarah looked down at her feet, bare, cut already from walking across the doormat's rough bristles. She'd been getting ready for bed when Daniel arrived. Hadn't grabbed shoes. Hadn't grabbed her phone or wallet or keys. Hadn't grabbed anything because you don't grab things when your husband tells you to leave. You argue. You cry. You try to understand. You don't plan for the part where he means it. The suitcase sat at the bottom of the steps. She picked it up, heavier than she remembered, the handle slick with rain, started walking because standing still meant freezing and freezing meant dying, and she had Emily to think about. Her daughter, 4 weeks from meeting the world, already learning that the world was cold and cruel and didn't care if you were ready. Sarah walked down the driveway, onto the sidewalk, past houses she'd admired for 3 years, Georgian mansions, colonial revivals, pristine lawns and security systems and lives that continued behind closed doors while hers ended in the street. Every step hurt. The concrete was rough. Pebbles and debris bit into her soles. She could feel blood mixing with rainwater, could feel her body screaming at her to stop, to sit down, to give up. She kept walking. 1/2 mile. That's what the GPS always said when she drove to the gas station. 1/2 mile from her house to the 24-hour convenience store on Wentworth. She'd driven it 100 times, never walked it, never imagined she'd walk it barefoot and pregnant in 40-degree rain while her husband locked himself inside with his mistress. The lights appeared after what felt like hours, bright, fluorescent, promising warmth and phones and people who might help. Sarah pushed through the door. A bell chimed, cheerful, incongruous. The woman behind the counter looked up from her phone. 50-something, tired eyes, name tag that said Donna. Her expression went from bored to horrified in half a second. "Holy hell, honey!" Donna came around the counter fast. "What happened? Are you hurt?" Sarah opened her mouth. Nothing came out, just a sound, raw and broken and barely human. Donna didn't ask again, just grabbed a gray blanket from behind the counter, the emergency kind they sold for $2, scratchy and thin, but better than nothing, and wrapped it around Sarah's shoulders. "Come sit, right here." Donna guided her to a plastic chair by the window. "When's your baby due?" 4 weeks, Sarah managed. I need to call my father." Donna pulled her personal cell phone from her apron pocket, pressed it into Sarah's shaking hands. "Take your time, sweetheart. Whatever you need." Sarah's fingers trembled so hard she almost dropped the phone. The number came from muscle memory, digits her father had made her memorize when she was 6. For emergencies, he'd said. You never know. He'd known. Somehow he'd known that one day she'd need him like this. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Sarah counted each ring like a prayer. "Hello?" William Davis sounded groggy, confused, a man dragged from sleep by an unknown number. "Daddy." The word came out like she was 5 years old, like she'd scraped her knee and needed him to fix it. Except this wasn't a scraped knee. This was her entire life bleeding out on a gas station floor. "I need you. Please. I need you right now." The sleep vanished from his voice. "Where are you?" "Gas station, Wentworth. The 24-hour one near the club." "What happened, are you, is the baby. Please just come." Sarah was crying now. Couldn't hold it back anymore. "Please, Daddy. I'm so scared. I'm already moving. 10 minutes. Maybe less." The sound of him pulling on clothes, grabbing keys, running. "Stay where you are. Stay warm. I'm coming, Sarah. I'm coming right now." The line went dead. Sarah sat in that plastic chair and let herself break. Really break. The kind of breaking where you stop fighting and just let it all wash over you. Her marriage was over. Her home was gone. Her husband had been lying for 7 years. She was 8 months pregnant with nowhere to go, and her feet were bleeding onto the gas station floor. Donna brought hot chocolate from the machine. Too sweet, too thin, but hot. So hot. "I've been there." Donna's voice was quiet. "Different details. Same feeling. Like someone just erased your whole life and you're supposed to figure out what comes next." Sarah looked at her. This stranger working midnight shift at a gas station in Charleston, showing her more kindness than the man who'd promised to love her forever. "Thank you." Inadequate. Insufficient. But all Sarah had. "Save your thanks." Donna patted her shoulder. "Your daddy's coming. That's what matters. And whoever did this to you, they're going to regret it. I promise you that. 10 minutes later, exactly as promised, a silver pickup truck pulled into the lot. William Davis was out before the engine stopped. 62 years old, but moving like a man half his age. Flannel shirt over pajamas. Unlaced boots. He'd dressed in seconds and driven like hell to reach her. He came through that door like he was ready to fight God himself if God stood between him and his daughter. Sarah. He dropped to his knees in front of her chair. His hands, rough from decades of construction work, cupped her face. Gentle. Careful. I'm here. Everything's going to be okay now. He looked at Donna. Something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, the silent language of people who'd seen darkness. Thank you for taking care of her. Donna handed him the blanket. You just make sure she stays safe, and whoever did this, make them pay. William helped Sarah to the truck. She left bloody footprints across the linoleum. Donna was already reaching for the mop before the door closed. Inside, the truck warmth, the heater blasting, Johnny Cash playing low on the radio, the smell of sawdust and coffee and safety. William didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, just drove with one hand on the wheel and murder in his eyes. Sarah wanted to tell him everything, wanted to explain what Daniel had done, but every time she tried to speak, another sob came out instead. You don't have to talk yet. William's voice was controlled. Careful. We're going to the hospital. Get you checked. Make sure the baby's okay. Everything else can wait. The hospital. Sarah's voice came out small. Your feet are bleeding. You've been in the cold too long. You're 36 weeks pregnant, and you just had the worst shock of your life. He glanced at her. I'm not taking any chances with you or my granddaughter. My granddaughter. He already claimed Emily, already loved her, already ready to fight for her. Fresh tears. But different now. Gratitude, relief, the overwhelming knowledge that even though her husband had abandoned her, she wasn't alone. She had her father. She had Emily. She had herself. That would have to be enough. The emergency room was chaos. Bright lights, loud voices, people rushing past with clipboards and wheelchairs, and the urgent efficiency of people who dealt with emergencies every night. Sarah got a wheelchair, a hospital gown. Someone cleaned her feet. The cuts were deep but not dangerous, they said. No glass, no infection risk, just trauma from concrete and cold. They put her in a room. Monitors, wires, a fetal heart rate detector pressed against her belly. The sound filled the room, fast, scared, but strong. 142 beats per minute. Emily's heart, racing but alive. Dr. Linda Brown appeared, 40-something. Kind eyes that had seen too many women in Sarah's situation. Let's check you both. Professional, calm. How far along are you? 36 weeks. Sarah's hands went automatically to her belly. Is she okay? Please tell me she's okay. Dr. Brown studied the monitors. She's stressed. So are you. Blood pressure is elevated. We need to bring it down before it becomes dangerous. Stress. Medical term for having your life destroyed. I'm keeping you overnight. Dr. Brown squeezed Sarah's hand, not just doctor to patient anymore, woman to woman. Your baby is resilient, stronger than you'd think. She's going to be fine. You're both going to be fine. William stood by the window, silent, watching, his phone in his hand like a weapon. A knock. Angela Young burst in, 34, red hair in a messy bun, yoga pants, college sweatshirt, the clothes she'd been wearing when William called at 1 a.m. I got here as fast as I could. Angela's eyes swept over Sarah, taking inventory, hospital gown, bandaged feet, tears. Sarah, what the hell happened? Daniel threw me out. Sarah's voice was flat, emotionless, shock setting in. For Melissa, his assistant. They've been together for years. He threw me out and she moved in. Angela's face went from concern to rage in half a second. She took a breath. When she spoke again, her voice was controlled, professional, the forensic accountant who'd helped Sarah through the CPA exam in law school. Do you still have access to accounts? Strange question. Out of place. But Sarah was too foggy to question it. I don't know. Everything was shared. Not anymore. Angela pulled out her laptop, opened it, fingers flying. Give me any password, anything he might use. Sarah's brain felt slow, thick, but she reached back. Max, his childhood dog's name. He uses it for everything. Angela typed. 4 minutes. Then she froze. I'm in. She turned the laptop around. Daniel's email inbox. Hundreds of messages. 7 years of digital evidence. Angela scrolled, clicked, her expression getting harder with each message. Sarah. Her voice was too controlled, the voice she used for bad news. Look at this. An email from Daniel Rodriguez to Melissa Clark, dated March 15, 2017, 6 months before Sarah's wedding. Subject. Tonight. Sarah's blood ran cold before she even read the preview. Angela opened it. Baby, tonight was perfect. Sarah thinks I'm at a business dinner. She's so trusting it's pathetic. Don't worry about the wedding. It's just paperwork, a business arrangement. Her trust fund will set us up for life and then we can do whatever we want. Just be patient. You're the one I love. Sarah read it 3 times. Each time the words cut deeper. A business arrangement. That's all she'd ever been. There's more. Angela's voice was gentle now. Much more. But Sarah, I found something else. Bank records, transfer confirmations, corporate documents. Your grandmother's trust fund, $14 million, protected. Only you could access it. Sarah nodded numbly. 3 months after your wedding, you signed a power of attorney. Do you remember? Memory surfaced, hazy. Daniel with papers, his charming smile. Just sign here, baby. Boring legal stuff. House purchase. I'll handle it. She'd signed without reading. Because she trusted him. Because she loved him. Because you don't suspect your husband of theft. How much? Sarah could barely get the words out. $9 million. Angela let it hang. Transferred to Meridian Holdings. That shell company funded Rodriguez development. Every property. Every dollar. All of it traces back to your grandmother's money. The room tilted. The monitors beeped faster. Dr. Brown rushed in. Breathe. You need to breathe. But Sarah couldn't breathe. $9 million. Her grandmother's legacy. The money meant to protect her. Daniel had stolen it, used it to build his empire, then thrown her away when he was done. He didn't build anything. The realization hit like ice water. I built it. My money, my inheritance. Everything he has is mine. Yes. Angela's voice was firm. You didn't marry a millionaire. You created one. Emily kicked hard, like she could feel her mother's shock. There's something else. Angela hesitated. Insurance records. Tell me. Sarah's voice was steel now. Everything. Angela pulled up another document. 6 months ago, life insurance, on you. $8 million total across 4 companies. Him as beneficiary. Sarah's blood turned to ice. I never signed life insurance. Your signature is on them, or something that looks like it. Angela met her eyes. Sarah, he wasn't just stealing. He was planning for you to have an accident. The heart monitor screamed. Emily's kicks turned frantic. Dr. Brown rushed back. What's happening? 1 minute. William's voice cut through everything. Please. Dr. Brown hesitated, nodded, withdrew. Sarah looked at her father, at Angela, at the evidence spread across the laptop. Her husband had thrown her into the rain hoping she'd die, hoping the cold would trigger complications, hoping to collect $8 million while Melissa raised her daughter. The man she loved, the man she trusted. He'd been planning her death while she planned their daughter's nursery. I'm going to destroy him. The words came out calm, certain. A voice Sarah didn't recognize. Something new, something forged in betrayal. I'm going to take everything, every penny, every property, everything he built with my stolen money. Good. William moved to her bedside, put his hand over hers. Because we're going to help you. Angela closed her laptop, eyes blazing. I'll find everything, every hidden account, every falsified document, every dollar. When I'm done, Daniel Rodriguez won't have enough money for a bus ticket. Sarah lay back, hand on her belly. Emily's heartbeat slowing, calming as Sarah's own heart steadied. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. Daniel had tried to isolate her, tried to make her small, tried to convince her she needed him. But she had people, real people, people who showed up at 1 a.m., people who fought for her. And with them beside her, she was going to burn Daniel Rodriguez's world to the ground. 2 weeks crawled by. Sarah moved into her father's house, into her childhood bedroom. Yellow wallpaper her mother had chosen 27 years ago, the room where she'd done homework and dreamed about her future. Now it was command central. Charts covered the walls, shell companies mapped in red, property transfers in blue, bank statements in yellow, a timeline of Daniel's betrayals stretching back 7 years. Down the hall, William had set up the nursery, painted it sage green, the same color Sarah had chosen for the room she'd never see again, assembled a crib, hung a mobile of stars, placed a rocking chair by the window. He didn't talk about it, just did it, because that's what William Davis did. This morning, Sarah sat at the desk by the window. Patricia Johnson sat across from her. 45, navy Armani, silver hair, the closer, 94% win rate, $850 an hour. William was paying without question. Walk me through it. Patricia's pen poised over her legal pad. From the beginning, Sarah had told this story a dozen times. Each time it hurt less. Each time the pattern became clearer. I met Daniel 7 years ago. Charity Gala, American Cancer Society at the Hibernian Hall. My mother had died of breast cancer. I wanted to support the cause. She paused. He said he was starting a real estate company. Big ideas, needed capital. He presented himself as successful, independent. But he was broke. Angela pulled up a document. Net worth negative $42,000. Credit cards maxed. Student loans defaulted. Drowning in debt while driving a rented Mercedes. He proposed after a year, married a year after that, Francis Marion Hotel. My father paid because Daniel said he wanted to save for our future. Patricia made notes. When did the theft begin? 3 months after the wedding, house purchase, Lagar Street. Daniel brought home papers. Said it was complicated, asked me to sign. Did he explain what you were signing? No. Said it was boring paperwork, nothing to worry about. Sarah closed her eyes. I was a corporate attorney, Columbia Law, top 10%. I should have read every page, but I loved him, trusted him, wanted the house. Patricia's expression didn't change. Not judgmental, just observant. Men like Daniel identify vulnerabilities and exploit them. Your love was his weapon. Within 2 weeks, $9 million had transferred to Meridian Holdings. Daniel bought distressed property in North Charleston, renovated, flipped for $3 million profit, repeated the process dozens of times. Now, Rodriguez Development owned 12 properties, $87 million total, all of it built on Sarah's inheritance. Life insurance. Patricia's voice sharpened. Tell me. $8 million across 4 companies. I never signed, which means Daniel forged my signature. Insurance fraud. Combined with throwing you out during high-risk pregnancy, there's an argument for conspiracy to commit murder. Patricia set down her pen. Under South Carolina law, marital assets get equitable distribution. You'd get half, maybe less if he argues business assets. Sarah's stomach sank. But these aren't business assets. Patricia's smile was cold. They're stolen property, your property. The remedy for theft isn't distribution. It's full restitution, plus interest, plus damages, plus punitive penalties. She can get everything. William leaned forward. She's entitled to everything. The question is proof. Patricia pulled out her legal pad. We need documentation. Angela has that. We need expert witnesses, handwriting analysts, financial forensics. I can provide those. We need testimony, Angela said quietly. Someone inside who can confirm the fraud. Christopher Harris. The name appeared in Sarah's mind. Daniel's business partner, 39. He'd been there that night, had watched, had done nothing. Christopher Harris. Sarah's voice was quiet. He knows everything. Watched it happen. Patricia made a note. We'll approach him. If he testifies, we have a case. If not, we build without him. But Sarah wasn't done. One more person. One more piece. Nicole Torres. Sarah stood, walked to the window. Daniel's assistant before Melissa. He fired her 4 years ago. Threatened to destroy her career if she talked. Angela was already typing. LinkedIn search. Nicole Torres, 29. Accountant at a small firm in Mount Pleasant. Sarah pulled out her phone, LinkedIn, found Nicole's profile, typed with shaking hands. Daniel threw me out while I was 8 months pregnant. I'm taking him down. I think you can help me, and I can help you get justice. She sent it before fear could stop her. The message showed as read 90 minutes later. Nicole's reply came 3 minutes after. When and where Sarah looked at Patricia, at Angela, at her father by the door. Set it up. Her voice was steel. We meet Nicole tomorrow. Then we file. We hit Daniel before he sees it coming. Patricia smiled, the kind that made opposing counsel nervous. I'll have paperwork ready by Friday. We'll file on 3 fronts simultaneously: civil suit, criminal complaint, FBI referral. How long until he realizes? 30 seconds after the first order hits. Patricia stood, gathered files. By the time he finds a lawyer, every account will be frozen, every property liened, every asset locked. Good. Sarah's hand went to her belly. Emily kicked, strong, determined. Because Daniel Rodriguez is about to learn what it feels like to lose everything. 3 days later, Sarah sat across from Nicole Torres in a Mount Pleasant coffee shop. Neutral, public, safe. Nicole looked different from her photo. Older, wearier, the kind of tired that came from carrying secrets. Why should I help you? Nicole's voice had an edge. I spent 4 years rebuilding. Why would I volunteer for this nightmare again? Sarah looked at her. Really looked. Saw herself in this woman's eyes. Because he's still doing it. Still hurting people. And he'll keep doing it until someone stops him. You're already stopping him. The news says, I froze his money. That's not stopping him. Sarah leaned forward. I have evidence of theft. Proof of fraud. What I need is proof he planned it. That he's a predator who calculates attacks. Nicole's jaw tightened. Her hands gripped the coffee cup. He does plan them. The words came out bitter. I watched for 3 years. Tell me. And Nicole did. Once she started, she couldn't stop. I was his assistant before Melissa. I watched him research you before that gala. Your grandmother's obituary, your mother's death, your trust fund structure. He built a complete profile before approaching you. Sarah's chest tightened. He targeted me deliberately. You were perfect. Wealthy family. Recent grief making you vulnerable. Career success meaning you were credible but too busy to notice. Nicole's voice was flat. He called you the ideal acquisition with his financial advisor. Every memory reshaping. Their meeting calculated. His charm rehearsed. His interest reconnaissance. I have recordings. Nicole pulled out a USB drive. 4 years. I knew he was dirty. I knew he'd sacrifice me eventually, so I documented everything. She slid it across the table. There's one you need to hear. October. 2 weeks before he threw you out. Play it. Nicole pulled out earbuds. Handed one to Sarah. Pressed play. Melissa's voice came through clear. The pregnancy is becoming a problem. She's tired all the time. Those medical bills are cutting into our travel budget. Daniel's response was casual. Bored. It'll be over soon. High-risk pregnancies have complications. If something goes wrong naturally well, that's what the insurance is for. Insurance plural. Melissa sounded surprised. $8 million. spread across 4 carriers so no single one flags it. Daniel sounded proud. If she has an accident, stress complications, premature labor, we collect and move forward. You really think she'll just have an accident? Stress is dangerous for pregnant women, especially discovering infidelity. Daniel's voice dropped. The shock alone might do it. A few hours in the cold, no medical help, emotional trauma. Nature might handle it for us. Melissa laughed. And if it doesn't, then we create another opportunity. High-risk pregnancies are fragile. The recording ended. Sarah sat perfectly still. Emily kicked inside her. Alive because nature hadn't cooperated, because Sarah's body was stronger than Daniel calculated, because Sarah survived. There's more. Nicole's voice was gentle now. 30 recordings. And Daniel's search history. She showed Sarah her phone. How to induce miscarriage naturally. High-risk pregnancy death statistics. Life insurance payout timeline. Hypothermia time to death. Can beneficiary be charged if death looks natural? He researched it. Nicole's voice broke. Like a business plan, and I suspected, but I was too scared, and I'm sorry. Sarah looked at this woman, damaged by the same predator. You're warning me now. Sarah kept her voice steady. You kept evidence. That matters. What do you need? Testify. Tell a jury what you told me. Make them understand Daniel Rodriguez is a predator who plans attacks. Nicole looked at Sarah's belly, at Emily, at the evidence of Daniel's failure. When do I start? Sarah walked into her father's house that evening with a USB drive containing Daniel's destruction and a witness willing to testify. William looked up from his newspaper. Read her face. You got it. Everything. Sarah set the drive on the kitchen table. Nicole has 4 years of recordings. Daniel discussing fraud, discussing insurance, discussing creating conditions for my death. And she'll testify. She'll testify. Sarah sat, felt the weight of 3 weeks pressing down. Patricia files Friday, civil criminal FBI. By Friday afternoon, Daniel's world ends. William stood, walked to his daughter, put his hands on her shoulders. Your mother would be proud. Your grandmother would be proud. I haven't won yet. Yes, you have. His voice was firm. You survived. You fought back. You built a case. You're taking back what was stolen. You've already won. Friday just makes it official. Sarah looked at her father, the man who'd built an empire, who'd raised her alone, who'd taught her strength wasn't about never falling, it was about always getting back up. I'm scared. Small. Vulnerable. What if we lose? We won't. William's voice was steel. Because you have truth, evidence, witnesses, and me, and Angela, and Patricia, and every woman who's been stolen from and thrown away. He squeezed her shoulders. Daniel Rodriguez picked the wrong woman. And Friday, he learns that lesson. Sarah stood, walked to the window, looked out at her mother's roses still blooming despite November chill. In 3 days, she would file, would freeze Daniel's assets, would start taking back everything. In 3 days, the war would begin. But tonight she could rest, could breathe, could feel Emily kicking and know her daughter would be born into a world where justice was possible. Sarah placed her hand on the window, cool glass under her palm. She didn't look like the woman in the rain 3 weeks ago. That woman had been broken, lost, certain her life was over. This woman was something else, something harder, something forged in betrayal and cold and the absolute determination to protect her daughter. This woman was dangerous, and Daniel Rodriguez was about to find out exactly how dangerous a woman became when you took everything and left her with nothing to lose. Thursday morning arrived with the force of a hurricane nobody saw coming. Sarah wasn't at ground zero when it hit. She was in her father's kitchen feeding Emily, barely 72 hours old, already showing the Davis stubbornness in the way she refused to latch until she was good and ready, while the television played footage of Daniel's world collapsing in real time. Channel 4 led with it. Channel 7 had it top of the hour, By 9:15, every news outlet in Charleston was running the same story with slight variations. Local developer faces fraud charges. Wife claims theft of millions. Emergency orders freeze assets. The screen showed Daniel's office building. Reporters crowding the entrance. Camera crews jostling for position. His attorneys, the expensive Charlotte firm with the marble-floored lobby, and the $2,000 an hour partners trying to push through without comment. Daniel himself looked like he'd aged a decade overnight. The footage caught him mid-stride, briefcase held up to block his face, but not fast enough. Sarah saw it. The panic. The disbelief. The dawning horror of a man who'd woken up to find every single account frozen, every property encumbered, his passport flagged at every border crossing. 72 hours ago, he'd thrown her into the rain. Now he couldn't access enough money to buy lunch. William stood at the counter pouring coffee he wouldn't drink. He'd been awake since Emily's birth Monday night. Hadn't slept. Wouldn't sleep until this was finished. Maybe not even then. The front door opened. Patricia walked in like she owned the place, briefcase in one hand, coffee carrier in the other. She looked energized, electric, a prosecutor who'd found the case that would define her career. His attorneys have been calling since 6:30. She set the coffee down, pulled out her laptop. 3 different firms, all saying the same thing. They want to delay the deposition. Need time to review discovery. Daniel requires space to organize his defense. Sarah shifted Emily to her other side. The baby's tiny fingers gripped Sarah's thumb with surprising strength. No. That's what I told them. Patricia smiled. Sharp, predatory. Deposition proceeds at 2 p.m. as scheduled. If he doesn't show, we file contempt and Judge Morrison issues a warrant. They know it. He knows it. Nobody's getting extra time. Angela appeared from the spare room she'd been using as a satellite office. Dark circles under her eyes from 96 straight hours of forensic accounting. Her laptop was open, 3 external drives plugged in, spreadsheets covering every inch of screen real estate. Final asset trace is complete. She turned the laptop around. Every single dollar, all 87 million, connects directly to your grandmother's trust fund. There's not one transaction that doesn't originate with the 9 million he stole. Even the watch he wore yesterday was purchased 6 weeks after he got power of attorney. What about Melissa? William's voice was rough. Controlled fury barely leashed. Social media's gone dark. Angela pulled up Instagram. Melissa's account was still public, but the last post was from Monday night. That photograph of her and Daniel celebrating in Sarah's living room while Sarah labored 4 miles away at MUSC. The comments had shifted dramatically. Early ones, "So happy for you both," and "You deserve this," were now buried under hundreds of newer responses. Did you know about the theft? How much did he pay you? Enjoy prison homewrecker. She's got representation. Patricia pulled out a file. Public defender, Rebecca Sanchez. Young, competent, drowning. Melissa can't afford private counsel because every account with her name on it got frozen. Turns out Daniel was paying her salary through Rodriguez Development. When we froze the company accounts, she got frozen too. Sarah looked down at Emily. The baby had fallen asleep mid-feed, milk-drunk and peaceful. Completely unaware her mother was systematically dismantling the man who'd conspired to kill them both. DA called this morning. Patricia continued. They want to offer Melissa a deal. Testify against Daniel, reduce charges maybe 8 to 10 instead of 15. No. Sarah's voice was ice. She Googled methods to induce miscarriage. She discussed my death like menu planning. She posted celebration photos while I was in labor. She gets every year we can prove. Patricia nodded. I told them the same. But without her testimony, the murder conspiracy charge gets harder. The recordings are powerful, but defense will argue it's just talk. Her testimony would corroborate intent. Then we prove intent another way. Sarah stood carefully cradling Emily. We have Christopher Harris. We have Nicole Torres. We have 17 forged signatures and 8 million in fraudulent insurance. We don't need Melissa's cooperation. We just need her in prison. The deposition was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Johnson & Associates. Sarah arrived at 1:40, Emily strapped to her chest in a carrier Angela had ordered overnight. 5 days postpartum, still bleeding, still exhausted, still running on rage and the primal need to protect her daughter. Daniel was already there, wedged between three attorneys like they could shield him from what was coming. He'd changed since the morning news footage, fresh suit hair combed, but the panic was still there. In his eyes, in the way his hands wouldn't stop moving. He didn't look at Sarah, kept his gaze fixed on the window, the table, the court reporter's stenotype machine. Anywhere except the woman he'd destroyed and the daughter he'd never meet. Sarah took her seat across from him. Emily stirred, made small sounds. Sarah's hand came up reflexively, soothing, protecting. For just a second, Daniel's eyes flicked toward them, toward his daughter. 5 days old, dark hair, perfect features, the baby he'd planned to collect insurance on after Sarah died in childbirth. Something crossed his face, not remorse, not love. Something closer to calculation, like he was still trying to find an angle, still looking for leverage. His lead attorney, Richard Miller, 60-something Rolex presidential, leaned over and whispered urgently. Patricia opened her folder, pulled out the first document, set it on the table with the deliberate care of someone dealing cards in a game she'd already won. "Mr. Rodriguez, can you explain why your signature appears on power of attorney documents Mrs. Davis claims she never authorized?" Miller's response was immediate, automatic. "My client invokes his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and declines to answer." The dance began. Patricia would ask. Miller would invoke, over and over, building a record where silence became its own kind of confession. "Can you explain the $9 million transfer from Mrs. Davis's trust fund to Meridian Holdings, LLC, Fifth Amendment? Can you explain why handwriting experts identified 17 separate instances of signature forgery, Fifth Amendment? Can you explain the 8 life insurance policies bearing Mrs. Davis's forged signature with you as sole beneficiary?" Daniel's hands gripped the table edge, white-knuckled, shaking. "Fifth Amendment." Sarah watched calmly, Emily sleeping against her chest, the baby's warmth anchoring her, reminding her this wasn't revenge, this was protection, making sure her daughter grew up in a world where men like Daniel faced consequences. Patricia worked through 37 questions methodically, received 37 Fifth Amendment invocations, built a record that would devastate any jury. Then she pulled out the kill shot, a manila folder, single sheet inside. She slid it across the table like she was showing a royal flush. "For the record, I'm showing Mr. Rodriguez a transcript of a recorded conversation dated October 30th, 2024, 14 days before he forcibly removed his 8 months pregnant wife from their marital home in 40-degree weather at midnight." The color drained from Daniel's face. Actually drained, like someone had pulled a plug. Patricia read in a monotone. Flat. Professional. Just facts entering the permanent record. Female voice identified through voice analysis as Melissa Clark. "The pregnancy is becoming a problem. She's always tired, always distracted. Those medical bills are eating into our travel budget." Male voice identified as Daniel Rodriguez. "It'll be over soon. High-risk pregnancies have complications all the time. If something goes wrong naturally, well, that's what the insurance is for." She paused. Let the court reporter catch up. Let the silence build. Female voice, insurance plural. Male voice, 8 million total. Spread across 4 carriers so no single company flags it. If she has an accident, stress-induced complications, premature labor, anything we collect and move forward. The silence in that conference room was absolute. Sarah could hear the HVAC, the scratch of the stenotype, Daniel's breathing fast and shallow like a cornered animal. Patricia looked up, met Daniel's eyes. "Is that your voice, Mr. Rodriguez? Discussing your wife's potential death as a financial opportunity. Discussing $8 million in insurance fraud. Discussing conditions that would lead to fatal pregnancy complications." Daniel's 3 attorneys erupted into motion, whispering frantically, gesturing. One of them, a younger woman, maybe 35, looked genuinely ill. Miller straightened. "We're invoking Fifth Amendment privilege on all questions related to this recording. Furthermore, this deposition is terminated. My client will answer no additional questions." He started gathering documents, hands shaking just enough to notice. Patricia smiled, the kind of smile that made seasoned litigators wake up sweating. "That's all I needed. See you in court, gentlemen." Daniel stood, started for the door, stopped, turned, looked at Sarah and Emily for the first time since the deposition began. Sarah saw it clearly. Not remorse, not apology, fear. Pure primal fear of a predator who'd finally met prey that fought back harder. He left without speaking, his attorneys flanking him, the door closing with a soft click that sounded like a coffin lid. Sarah sat perfectly still, waiting for triumph, for satisfaction. Instead, she felt sharp pain low in her abdomen, different from normal postpartum cramping, sharper, urgent, wrong. Emily woke crying, not her hungry cry, her distressed cry. Sarah looked down and saw blood, too much blood, soaking through her clothes, pooling on the leather chair. Angela was beside her instantly, Patricia already on her phone with 911. William appeared from somewhere, taking Emily, his face gray with terror. "Postpartum hemorrhage." Patricia's voice was steady despite what Sarah could see in her eyes. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out. Sarah, stay with me." Sarah's vision swam, the room tilted. She tried to focus on Emily's cries, on her daughter pulling her back from darkness. "Emily." Her voice came out slurred, weak. "Take care of Emily." "You're taking care of Emily." William's voice was iron. Command. "Stay awake. Stay with us." The world went gray, then black. Sarah woke up 54 hours later. First thing she saw Emily, 8 days old, sleeping in a hospital bassinet, safe, healthy, alive. Second, Angela asleep in a chair, laptop balanced on her knees, snoring softly. Third, her father at the window, silhouette against morning light. "Dad," voice like gravel. He turned. Relief flooded his face so completely it made her chest ache. "You're awake." He was beside her in 2 strides. 54 hours, Sarah. Emergency surgery. Retained placenta. You lost a lot of blood, but you're okay now. Sarah tried to sit up. Her body screamed protest. "Emily is perfect. Angela and I have been rotating shifts. She's fed and changed and completely healthy. The NICU nurses taught us everything." The pieces came back slowly. The deposition, Daniel's face, the recording, the blood. What did I miss? Stronger now. Angela stirred, woke. Her face transformed when she saw Sarah conscious. "Oh, thank God. You scared us to death." "What did I miss?" Sarah repeated. Angela and William exchanged glances. Angela pulled up her laptop. The headline, "Rodriguez Legal Team Withdraws. Citees Ethical Concerns." The article explained how the Charlotte firm had filed emergency withdrawal yesterday. The official language was irreconcilable differences regarding case strategy, but everyone knew the translation. They'd heard the recording and realized defending Daniel was career suicide. "There's more." Angela clicked to another tab. "Christopher Harris called, wants to meet, says he has information and he'll testify for immunity." Sarah's mind sharpened immediately. 54 hours unconscious and emergency surgery hadn't dulled her edge. "Set it up. Clear. Certain. But I meet him. Not Patricia. Not you. Me. Sarah, you just had emergency surgery. I meet him. No room for argument. If Christopher's flipping, he flips to me. He needs to see what I've become." Christopher Harris arrived at the hospital 6 days later. Sarah was sitting up now, pale, weak, but alert. He looked terrible. 40 years old, but aging and fast forward. Unshaven, rumpled, red eyes. He stood in the doorway like he was afraid to come closer. "Thank you for seeing me." Hoarse, broken. "I know I have no right." "Sit down, Christopher." Sarah's voice was calm, the tone you'd use with a frightened animal. "Tell me why you're here." He sat, couldn't meet her eyes, stared at his hands. "I have a daughter, 12, lives in Atlanta with her mother. I see her holidays, some summers." He looked up. met Sarah's eyes. I watched Daniel throw you out. Pregnant, barefoot, 40 degrees, and I did nothing. Stood there while you bled across the foyer. Tears, not delicate, ugly, wrenching sobs. If Madison ever learned what kind of man I am, if she knew I helped Daniel steal, if she knew I watched him hurt you and stayed silent. Complete breakdown. I could never look at her again. Sarah let him cry, let him break, let him purge the guilt. When he quieted, she spoke. What do you have? He pulled out a USB drive, set it on the hospital tray. Everything. 6 years of evidence, bank statements, email chains discussing the theft, forged documents next to originals, appraisals we falsified, insurance applications with your forged signature that I notarized because Daniel said you'd signed them at home. Shaky breath. And recordings. I started recording meetings 2 years ago. I knew this would collapse eventually. Daniel discussing shell companies, explaining how to avoid detection, laughing about how stupid you were. Sarah's hands clenched the blanket. Voice stayed level. Why should I trust this? Because I brought this. He pulled out a photograph. 12-year-old girl with dark hair and his eyes. Smiling. My daughter Madison. I'm willing to swear on her life that every piece of evidence on that drive is authentic. That I'll testify to all of it. That I'll tell a jury exactly what Daniel Rodriguez is. Trembling hands holding the photo. And if I'm lying, if I betray you again, I hope you destroy me like you're destroying him. Because I deserve it. Sarah took the USB drive, small piece of plastic containing Daniel's annihilation. Immunity is contingent on full cooperation. If you hold anything back, if you lie, if you protect Daniel in any way, the deal is void and you go down with him. Understand? Yes. No hesitation. Get out. Quiet. Not cruel. Just done. Patricia will send the immunity agreement. Read every word. Sign it. Christopher. He paused at the door. Thank you for being too weak to keep lying. It's not courage, but it's something. He left. Door clicked shut. Sarah looked at the drive in her hand. Justice came from unlikely places. From cowards who finally broke. From guilt that eroded silence. From daughters who made fathers want to be better. She'd take it, however it came. 14 days postpartum. Sarah sat across from Nicole Torres in the hospital cafeteria. After hours. Angela had bribed security with Gamecock's tickets. Nicole looked exactly like her profile. Neat ponytail. Practical clothes. Woman who'd learned invisibility was survival. Why should I help? Nicole's voice had an edge. Angry, not scared. I spent 4 years rebuilding. I've moved on. Why would I relive this nightmare? Sarah adjusted Emily in her arms. Because he's still doing it. Still hurting people. He'll keep doing it until someone stops him permanently. You're already stopping him. I froze his money. That's not stopping him. Sarah leaned forward. I have bank records, forged signatures, Christopher's testimony. What I need is proof Daniel knew exactly what he was doing, that he's a predator who plans methodically. Nicole's jaw tightened, hands gripping coffee cup hard enough to crack it. He does plan. Bitter, hard. I watched for 3 years. Tell me. And Nicole did. Once started, couldn't stop. I was his assistant before Melissa. I watched him research you before that gala, your grandmother's obituary, your mother's death certificate, your trust fund structure. He built a complete dossier before approaching you. Sarah's blood ran cold. He targeted me from the beginning. You were perfect. Wealthy family, recent loss making you vulnerable. Career success meaning credible but too busy to notice. Nicole's voice was clinical. He called you the ideal acquisition with his banker. Every memory reshaping. First conversation scripted. Shy charm calculated. Interest in her work reconnaissance. I have recordings. Nicole pulled out her drive. 4 years. I knew he was dirty. I knew he'd sacrifice me, so I documented everything. She slid it across. There's one you need to hear. 2 weeks before he threw you out. Play it. Nicole pulled out earbuds, handed one to Sarah, pressed play. Crystal clear. Melissa's voice. The pregnancy is becoming a problem. She's always tired. Those medical bills are cutting into our travel fund. Daniel's response, casual, bored. It'll be over soon. High-risk pregnancies have complications. If something goes wrong naturally, that's what the insurance is for. Sarah had heard this at the deposition, but hearing it again, knowing there was more. Insurance plural, Melissa surprised. 8 million, spread across 4 carriers. Daniel proud, clever. If she has an accident, stress complications, premature labor, we collect and move forward. You really think she'll just have an accident? Skeptical. Stress is dangerous for pregnant women, especially discovering infidelity. Conspiratorial. The shock alone might do it. A few hours in the cold, no medical help, emotional trauma. Nature might handle it. Melissa laughed. And if it doesn't, then we create another opportunity. Car accident, slip in the shower, high-risk pregnancies are fragile. Pause. Important thing is timing. Insurance active. Divorce papers drafted. Once she's gone, we stop pretending. Recording ended. Sarah sat perfectly still. Emily warm against her chest. Alive. Breathing. Safe because nature hadn't cooperated. Because Sarah's body was stronger than Daniel calculated. Because Sarah survived. There's more. Nicole's voice gentle now. 30 recordings. And Daniel's search history. She showed Sarah her phone. How to induce miscarriage stress. High-risk pregnancy mortality rates. Life insurance payout timeline. Can beneficiary be charged if death appears natural? Hypothermia time to death. He researched it. Nicole's voice broke. Like a business strategy. I suspected, but I was too scared, and I'm sorry. Sarah looked at this woman, damaged by the same predator. You're warning me now. Sarah steady. You kept evidence. That matters. What do you need? Testify. Tell a jury. Let them hear the recordings with your context. Make them understand Daniel Rodriguez is a predator who calculates. Nicole looked at Emily, at Sarah's belly where life had survived. When do I start? The filing went public at 9 a.m. Thursday. By 9:40, every account was frozen. By 10, every news outlet had the story. Sarah watched from her hospital bed, readmitted for follow-up bleeding as coverage exploded. Millionaire developer empire built on stolen inheritance. Recordings suggest murder for insurance plot. Pregnant wife sues for entire company. Patricia had orchestrated it perfectly. Civil suit, criminal complaints, FBI referral, all filed simultaneously at exactly 9. Hit Daniel from 3 directions before his first coffee. Sarah's phone rang. Daniel's number. She let it ring 3 times. Answered. Sarah, please. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Daniel. Ice. I have the ledgers. Christopher's testimony. Nicole's recordings, including the one where you and Melissa discussed how convenient my death would be. Silence. Just breathing. Fast. Panicked. What do you want? Everything. No waiver. The company, the properties, the accounts, everything you built with my money. And a full public confession. I'll fight this, drag it out for years, bury you in legal fees. Then I release the murder conspiracy recording to every outlet by tonight. You won't just be a fraud, Daniel. You'll be a monster who conspired to murder his pregnant wife. Your choice. She hung up. Emily stirred, started fussing. Sarah lifted her, felt the baby's heartbeat against her own. Mama's got you, whispered into Emily's dark hair. Mama's making sure you grow up where men like him face consequences. Angela burst through the door. You need to see this. Melissa posted again. Laptop turned around. Photo Melissa in Sarah's living room wearing a red designer dress. Caption, New beginnings with my soulmate. Everything happens for a reason. Heart emoji. Blessed. Posted 40 minutes ago. While Sarah recovered from emergency surgery. While Emily was 2 weeks old. Comments already vicious. You helped him steal, homewrecker and accomplice. Enjoy prison. She just handed us consciousness of guilt and asset destruction. Angela gleeful. This goes straight to the judge. Sarah stared at the photo, them celebrating with stolen money while she fought for her life. Screenshot everything, download, backup in 3 locations. Deadly calm. When this goes to trial, I want the jury to see this. I want them to know that 2 weeks after throwing his pregnant wife into the rain, Daniel Rodriguez was posing for Instagram. Already done. Angela grinned. Sarah looked down at Emily. 2 weeks old. Perfect. Unaware. Let them celebrate. Let them think they're safe. Because when this was over, Daniel and Melissa were both going to prison, and Sarah would own everything. 3 months crawled by. Sarah learned to function on 3 hours of sleep, nurse Emily while reviewing depositions, pump in courthouse bathrooms. Discovered motherhood and warfare were symbiotic. Emily thrived. 4-hour sleep stretches by 6 weeks. Early smiles. At 3 months, steady head control, object tracking, surprising grip strength. Legal bills mounted. 2.8 million spent. Patricia's fees, expert witnesses, forensic accountants. Justice ran on money and they were burning through it. But Daniel was bleeding faster. New lawyers, local firm, competent, not elite, charging rates he couldn't sustain. Frozen assets meant no income. Every day, deeper. He was running out of moves. Today was the day he ran out completely. The conference room looked exactly as it had 3 months earlier. Same table, same harbor view. Everything had changed. Sarah at one end. Navy Chanel. Emily sleeping in carrier at her feet. Patricia and 2 associates. Angela with 3 laptops. Daniel at the other. Gray suit, almost white hair now, face gaunt, hands shaking. 3 different lawyers Charlotte firm had quit when his retainer bounced. Between them, 247 pages. The surrender, complete transfer of Rodriguez development. 12 properties, 87 million. Repayment of stolen trust with compound interest. 9 million became 12.6 million. Lagar Street house, cars, boat, everything. Public confession released to media within 48 hours. No contact with Sarah or Emily for life. Daniel's hand shook, picking up the pen. You're taking everything. Hollow. Dead. Sarah looked at him. The man she'd loved. Who'd planned her death. I'm taking back what's mine. Everything you have you stole from me. I'm not taking what you built. I'm reclaiming what you stole. He met her eyes. 7 years meant something. It meant I learned what kind of man you are. Now sign or I withdraw and you face federal prosecution. 20 years minimum. Your choice. His lawyers whispered. One touched his shoulder. Message clear, best deal you'll get. Daniel signed. Every page, every clause, hand shaking so badly signatures were barely legible. Patricia gathered documents, verified signatures, handed copies to Daniel's attorneys. Sarah stood, picked up Emily's carrier, paused at the door. I hope prison gives you time to think about what you've done. She walked out without looking back. In the hallway, Angela exhaled. You won. 87 million. Everything. Sarah looked down at Emily. 3 months old. Perfect. Unaware. I didn't win. Quiet. I survived. And I made sure my daughter never has to fight this battle. That's enough. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Because Daniel and Melissa still faced criminal charges, and Sarah was going to make sure they got every year they deserved. The federal courthouse in downtown Charleston had seen its share of dramatic trials, but nothing quite like this. 6 weeks after Daniel signed away his empire, Sarah Davis walked through the brass doors holding 4-month-old Emily and prepared to watch Melissa Clark's world burn. The trial had consumed 2 full weeks, 14 days of testimony that grew progressively more damning. The prosecution had built their case methodically. Financial records, email chains, phone logs, each piece of evidence, another brick in a wall that now surrounded Melissa completely. She sat at the defense table, looking nothing like the woman who'd posed for Instagram in Sarah's bathrobe. The blonde hair was pulled back severely. No makeup, beige pantsuit designed to project innocence. But the jury wasn't buying it. Sarah could see it in their faces. The way they looked at Melissa, or more accurately, the way they refused to look at her. Rebecca Sanchez, the public defender, had fought hard, argued Melissa was manipulated by an older, wealthier, more powerful man, painted her as a victim who didn't fully understand the scope of Daniel's crimes, claimed she'd been dazzled by luxury and promises too young and naive to recognize fraud when she participated in it. But then the prosecution had called Nicole Torres. Nicole had been devastating. 6 hours of testimony over 2 days. Calm, precise, methodical. She'd walked the jury through Melissa's involvement from the beginning, how Melissa had helped Daniel research Sarah's background, how she'd laughed about the ideal acquisition, how she'd celebrated each successful theft like they were wins in a game, and the recordings. God, the recordings. The courtroom had fallen silent as Nicole played them. Daniel and Melissa discussing the insurance policies. Melissa asking when the problem would resolve itself. Her laughter when Daniel explained how stress could induce fatal complications. But the prosecution's kill shot had been Melissa's journal. The FBI had found it during the search of the Legare Street house, leather-bound, hidden in a drawer beneath winter sweaters Melissa would never need in Charleston. 3 years of handwritten entries documenting her relationship with Daniel, her frustration with Sarah's existence, her excitement about the life she'd build once Sarah was gone. The prosecutor, Karen Martinez, 40-something and relentless, had read excerpts in a flat professional voice that somehow made the words even more chilling. March 2024, D says the insurance is almost ready. $8 million total. Once she's gone, we're set for life. Can't wait. October 2024. She waddles around my house like she owns it. My kitchen, my bedroom, my life. Just a few more weeks, and nature takes its course. November 1st, 2024, D is doing it tonight. Throwing her out. She's 8 months pregnant. Between the cold and the shock, something's bound to give. Either way, problem solved. Already planning how to redecorate that hideous nursery she painted. Several jurors had looked physically sick. Juror 4, a grandmother with kind eyes, had actually cried. Juror 7, a father of 3, had stared at Melissa with something approaching pure hatred. Now they filed back in after barely 3 hours of deliberation. 12 people carrying Melissa's fate. Not one of them looked in her direction as they took their seats. Sarah knew what that meant. She'd learned enough during 3 months of legal warfare to read the signs. The foreman stood. A teacher, mid-50s, married with kids. Exactly the kind of person who would be horrified by what Melissa had done. Judge Barbara Garcia. Stern fare. No patience for games. Looked at him over her reading glasses. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The clerk took the form, handed it to the judge. She read it silently, her face revealing nothing. The defendant will rise. Melissa stood on trembling legs. Rebecca put a hand on her arm, trying to provide whatever support she could. On the count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, how do you find guilty? Melissa swayed. Rebecca steadied her. On the count of conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, how do you find guilty? On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find guilty? On all counts, what is your verdict? Guilty on all counts, Your Honor. Unanimous. Melissa's legs gave out. She went down hard. Rebecca and a bailiff caught her before she hit the floor, dragged her back into her chair. She was sobbing now, hysterical. Great gasping sobs that echoed through the courtroom. Sarah felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just the cold certainty that this was how justice worked. Slowly, methodically. But it worked. William sat beside her, holding Emily while Sarah watched. Angela and Patricia sat in the row behind, a small army that had fought for this moment. We did it, Angela whispered. Sarah shook her head slightly. Not yet. This is just the beginning. Sentencing came 4 weeks later. Same courtroom, same judge, different atmosphere, heavier, more final, like the air itself knew this was the end. Sarah sat in the gallery with Emily, almost 5 months old now, trying to grab everything within reach, babbling constantly. William beside her. Angela and Patricia in their usual positions. Across the aisle, Melissa's mother sat alone. Small woman, maybe 65, weeping silently. Sarah felt a flash of sympathy for her. Not for Melissa, never for Melissa, but for the mother who'd raised a daughter and watched her become something monstrous. Judge Garcia reviewed the pre-sentencing report. No character witnesses had come forward, 2 letters of support from family members begging for leniency. Psychological evaluation flagged narcissistic personality disorder with sociopathic tendencies. Rebecca made one final attempt. Stood and argued that Melissa was young, that she'd been manipulated, that she deserved a second chance to rebuild her life. Karen Martinez countered with the journal entries, with the Google searches on Melissa's laptop, how to make pregnancy complications look natural, and high-risk pregnancy death rate, and life insurance payout timeline. With the recording where Melissa had laughed about Sarah's potential death. With the Instagram post celebrating while Sarah was in labor. Judge Garcia listened to both sides. Then she removed her glasses, looked directly at Melissa. Ms. Clark, you conspired to murder a pregnant woman for financial gain. You showed no remorse, no empathy, no basic human decency throughout this process. This court has reviewed extensive evidence, including your own written words, celebrating the anticipated death of Mrs. Davis and her unborn child. She paused. Let the words settle. You wrote that you couldn't wait to redecorate the nursery after Mrs. Davis died. You posted celebratory photographs on social media while she was giving birth to a child you planned to help raise after murdering her mother. You researched methods to induce fatal pregnancy complications, and when confronted with this evidence, you showed no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught. Melissa started crying again. Please, Your Honor, I'm so sorry. I was young and stupid, and I made terrible mistakes. You're sorry because you're facing consequences. Judge Garcia's voice was steel. You weren't sorry when you wore Mrs. Davis's bathrobe and celebrated her suffering. You weren't sorry when you posted on Instagram while she labored in a hospital bed. You weren't sorry when you discussed her death like it was a business transaction. She picked up her gavel. The court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for the first 8 years. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $500,000 to Mrs. Davis for emotional damages. Melissa screamed, actually screamed. No, please, I can't. I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. Bailiffs moved in, handcuffed her, started leading her away. She twisted back, looking at Sarah for the first time in the entire trial. I'm sorry. Please. Sarah said nothing, just looked at her steadily. Let her see what she'd become, not a victim, not prey. Something forged in rain and betrayal and absolute determination. Melissa was dragged out, her screams echoing down the corridor. Fading. Gone. Sarah stood, gathered Emily from her father's arms, walked out into bright April sunshine. Reporters mobbed the courthouse steps, cameras everywhere. Microphones thrust toward her face, questions shouted from every direction. Mrs. Davis, how do you feel about the verdict? Sarah stopped, looked directly into the cameras, spoke clearly, calmly with the words she'd practiced for weeks. I hope this case sends a message to every woman out there. You can fight back. You can win. You don't have to stay silent when someone tries to destroy you. And to anyone who thinks they can steal, cheat, and murder without consequences, we're watching. We're not afraid, and we will make you pay. Applause erupted, not just from reporters, from people who'd been following the trial, women who saw themselves in Sarah's story, men who understood that justice mattered. Sarah descended the steps. Angela held the car door. She slid in, buckled Emily into her car seat. As they drove away, she allowed herself one small smile. Melissa Clark would be 40 years old before she walked free. Daniel's trial was 3 months away. But the real victory wasn't revenge. It was Emily, the daughter sleeping peacefully in the back seat. The child who would grow up knowing her mother was strong, capable, unbreakable. That was worth more than any amount of money. Daniel Rodriguez's trial began on a Monday in late July, 8 months after he'd thrown Sarah into the rain. 7 months since he'd signed away his empire. 5 months since Melissa's conviction. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity, every seat filled, media presence even heavier than Melissa's trial. This was the main event. The millionaire developer who'd built an empire on stolen money and conspired to murder his pregnant wife. Daniel sat at the defense table looking like a ghost of himself. The suit that had once fit perfectly now hung loose on his frame. He'd lost at least 30 pounds. His hair had gone completely white, face gaunt, eyes hollow. 8 months of legal warfare had aged him 2 decades. His attorneys, the fourth set since the initial filing, were competent Charleston lawyers, good trial attorneys who knew their way around a courtroom. But they were facing an impossible case with a client who'd invoked the Fifth Amendment 37 times and had no credible defense. Sarah sat in the gallery with Emily, now 8 months old, babbling constantly, trying to pull herself up on anything within reach. William beside her, Angela and Patricia in their familiar spots. The prosecution opened with Christopher Harris. Christopher took the stand wearing a conservative gray suit and the expression of a man trying to buy back his soul. He testified for 9 hours over 3 days, walked the jury through every fraudulent transaction in excruciating detail, every forged signature, every falsified appraisal, every lie. He explained how Daniel had targeted Sarah deliberately, how he'd spent weeks researching her background before ever approaching her at that charity gala, how the entire courtship had been a calculated operation to access her trust fund. He didn't call it dating. Christopher's voice was flat, ashamed. He called it the acquisition phase, like she was a company we were buying, like she wasn't even human. Daniel's attorneys tried to discredit him, pointed out the immunity deal, suggested he was lying to save himself from prison. But Christopher had the USB drive, 6 years of irrefutable documentation, emails where Daniel explicitly discussed the fraud, strategy memos outlining exactly how to hide the stolen money, recordings where he laughed about how pathetically trusting Sarah was. The jury listened, took notes, looked at Daniel with increasing disgust. Then Nicole Torres testified. Nicole was even more composed than she'd been at Melissa's trial, more confident. She knew what to expect now, knew how to deliver testimony that would devastate. She walked the jury through Daniel's methodology step by step, how he identified targets, how he built psychological profiles, how he executed long-term cons with the precision of a military operation, and then she played the recordings. The courtroom fell absolutely silent as Daniel's voice filled the space. Discussing the insurance policies with Melissa, explaining how extreme stress could induce fatal pregnancy complications, laughing about how nature might handle the problem for them. Several jurors looked physically ill. One, a young woman, maybe 28, was openly crying. Daniel's attorneys objected repeatedly, argued the recordings were taken without proper consent. Judge Thomas Moore, 60s, no-nonsense former prosecutor, overruled every objection. South Carolina was a one-party consent state. Nicole had been party to the conversations. The recordings were admissible. The prosecution played all 30 recordings over 3 days. By the end, the jury wasn't just disgusted. They were horrified. Then came the prosecution's most damaging witness. Dr. Michael Johnson took the stand, 68 years old, family physician, Daniel's personal doctor for 12 years. Karen Martinez approached him carefully. "Dr. Johnson, did the defendant ever discuss his wife's pregnancy with you?" "Yes, multiple times over several months leading up to the incident." "Can you describe those conversations?" Dr. Johnson looked deeply uncomfortable, like he wished he'd paid more attention at the time. He asked questions, always framed as hypothetical, about pregnancy complications. What could go wrong? What circumstances might cause premature labor or miscarriage? What specific questions did he ask? He asked whether extreme emotional stress could induce labor in a high-risk pregnancy, whether prolonged exposure to cold could cause complications, whether a pregnant woman experiencing severe psychological shock might suffer a stroke or heart attack. Dr. Johnson's voice was quiet, ashamed. "At the time, I thought he was just an anxious, expectant father. Looking back now, knowing what I know, he was researching how to kill his wife and make it look like a natural complication." Daniel's attorneys tried damage control on cross-examination, pointed out that Dr. Johnson had no direct evidence of criminal intent, that many expectant fathers asked worried questions about pregnancy risks. But combined with the recordings, the forged insurance policies, the actual act of throwing Sarah into 40-degree weather while she was 8 months pregnant, the pattern was undeniable and damning. The defense tried to present their case, brought in character witnesses who'd known Daniel for years, business associates who called him honest and ethical and generous. The prosecution destroyed them on cross-examination, pointed out that they'd all been deceived, that Daniel had built his reputation on money stolen from his wife, that everything they thought they knew about him was elaborate fiction. Daniel never testified. His attorneys advised strongly against it. Too many questions he couldn't answer without incriminating himself further. Too much risk. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. They came back with their verdict at 3:30 on a Friday afternoon. Sarah sat in the gallery holding Emily. Her daughter was fussy, tired, ready for dinner in bed. But Sarah needed to be here for this, needed to see it through to the absolute end. The foreman stood, a business consultant in his early 40s, married, 2 kids, someone who understood what trust meant and what betrayal cost. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have your honor. Judge Moore took the form, read it silently. His face revealed nothing. The defendant will rise. Daniel stood slowly. His attorneys stood with him, all 3 looking like they knew exactly what was coming and could do nothing to stop it. On count 1 wire fraud, how do you find guilty? On count 2 bank fraud, how do you find guilty? On count 3 insurance fraud, how do you find guilty? On and on. 39 counts total, 39 guilty verdicts, each one another nail hammered into Daniel's coffin. When it was over, Daniel sat down heavily. He didn't cry, didn't react, just sat there staring at his hands like he couldn't quite process that this was real. Sentencing came 7 weeks later. Same courtroom, same judge, different atmosphere. Final, irrevocable. Judge Moore reviewed the pre-sentencing report, the prosecution's sentencing memorandum, the defense's plea for leniency. Then he looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Rodriguez, you perpetrated a fraud of truly staggering scope and cruelty. You identified a grieving woman as a target. You researched her vulnerabilities. You courted her with the specific intent of accessing her inheritance. You married her under false pretenses. You stole $9 million over 7 years. And then when she became pregnant, and therefore more expensive and less convenient, you conspired to murder her for insurance money. He paused. Let each word land with full weight. You researched methods to induce fatal pregnancy complications. You took out $8 million in fraudulent life insurance policies. You threw your 8 months pregnant wife into 40-degree weather at midnight hoping she would die of exposure or stress-induced complications. And when she survived, when she fought back, when she began uncovering your crimes, you showed no remorse whatsoever. Only fury that your plan had failed. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. There was nothing left to say. This court sentences you to 18 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for the first 12 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay $12.6 million in restitution to Mrs. Davis, representing the stolen trust fund principal plus compound interest at the legal rate. 18 years. Daniel would be 59 years old when he became eligible for parole. 61 if he actually got released. Sarah felt Emily squirm in her arms. Her daughter reached for her face, babbling happily, completely unaware that her father had just been sentenced to nearly 2 decades in federal prison. Sarah kissed Emily's forehead gently. It's over, sweetheart. Mama won. We're safe now. 1 year after the night in the rain, Sarah stood in the renovated lobby of Davis Property Group and felt something close to peace for the first time since her world had ended and begun again. The transformation was complete. Daniel's marble and crystal were gone, replaced with warm wood and natural light. The walls displayed photographs of completed projects, not luxury developments for millionaires, but affordable housing for working families. 8 properties completed, 1,600 families living in homes they could actually afford, a waiting list stretching to 12,000 and growing. Emily toddled beside her, one hand gripping Sarah's finger for balance. 16 months old now, walking confidently most of the time, falling occasionally, always getting back up, just like her mother. Angela appeared from her office with quarterly reports. We just turned our first significant profit, not as much as the old company made, but it's honest money earned ethically. I'll take honest over stolen every single time, Sarah smiled. Christopher Harris came down the hallway. He'd stayed on after testifying, accepting a partnership position at half his previous salary. His office was next to Sarah's now. Equal partners in a company built on transparency. The second affordable housing development breaks ground next week. He handed Sarah a folder containing blueprints and site plans. On the waterfront lot where Daniel was going to build that luxury resort he was inflating values for. Sarah opened the folder. Mixed-use development with apartments, townhouses, a daycare center, a community health clinic, housing for the people who made Charleston work but could never afford to live there under the old system. He would absolutely hate this. Sarah felt deep satisfaction. Every single decision we've made, every family we've helped, every dollar we've earned honestly. That's exactly the point. Christopher's voice was serious. We're not just building housing. We're proving it can be done differently, that you don't have to exploit and destroy people to succeed in real estate. The Elizabeth Davis Foundation was thriving. 47 women helped in the first year alone. Legal fees covered, job training provided, new starts in new cities funded, emergency resources for women fleeing dangerous situations. Sarah had named it for her grandmother, for the woman who'd survived the Great Depression and built a fortune from nothing and taught her that you never let any man tell you what you're worth. William arrived at noon carrying lunch and another stuffed animal for Emily's rapidly growing collection. She looks exactly like you did at this age. He watched his granddaughter with fierce pride. Your mother would be incredibly proud of what you've built. I think about her all the time now. Sarah sat down with her sandwich, especially raising Emily. I understand things I never understood before. Like what? Like how much she sacrificed for me. How many times she must have put her own needs aside. How terrifying it must have been sometimes knowing she could never guarantee my safety. How much she loved me. How badly she wanted me to have the freedom she didn't always have. You have that freedom now. William's voice was quiet, certain. Freedom from anyone who would try to control or diminish you. Emily climbed into her grandfather's lap, showed him the new elephant-made trumpet sounds that came out like adorable squeaks. Sarah watched them together. Her father who'd built an empire with his bare hands. Her daughter who would grow up knowing that women could do exactly the same. She'd lost so much in the past year. Her marriage, her innocence, her belief that loving someone would protect her from harm. But she'd gained so much more. Her daughter, her company, her sense of self. The absolute knowledge that she could survive anything, face anything, overcome anything. That evening after everyone had left, Sarah stood on the porch of her father's house watching the sunset paint the Charleston sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. Rain began to fall, soft, gentle. The same November rain that had fallen 1 year ago on the night that changed everything. Sarah didn't go inside. She stood there holding Emily, watching the colors shift and blend. Look, sweetheart, see the pretty sky. Pity. Emily's pronunciation was improving. Pity colors. Yes, everything is pretty. Everything is good. Mama loves you more than anything in the whole world. Love Mama. Emily squeezed Sarah's neck in a tight hug. William came to the door. Sarah, you're both getting wet. She turned, smiled at her father. I know, Dad. It's okay. We're okay. He sat beside them on the porch swing, put his arm around her, held his granddaughter's tiny hand, 3 generations connected by love and strength. I used to hate the rain. Sarah's voice was quiet, reflective. After that night, every time it rained, I would remember everything, feel it all over again, the cold, the fear, the absolute certainty that my life was ending. And now I see it completely differently. She watched the drops fall. The rain didn't destroy me. It washed away everything that wasn't real, all the lies, all the manipulation, the entire false life I was living. It stripped me down to nothing. And from that nothing I built something real and true." Emily yawned, rested her head against her mother's chest, eyes growing heavy. They sat together in the gentle rain, past and present and future intertwined. Eventually, Emily fell asleep. William carried her inside to bed. Sarah followed, pausing at the door for one last look at the rain. It was beautiful, cleansing, renewing, full of promise. And it was hers. This moment, this life, this future, all hers. Finally and absolutely and irrevocably hers. 5 years had passed since Daniel threw her into the rain. 60 months of rebuilding. 1,825 days of teaching her daughter that strength was something you discovered, not something someone else could give or take away. Sarah stood outside Magnolia Academy watching Emily line up with the other kindergartners. 5 years old now, unicorn backpack, 2 perfect braids, eyes bright with excitement about her first day of real school. The teacher knelt down, greeting each child. "What do you want to be when you grow up, Emily?" Emily didn't hesitate even for a second. "Like my mama. She builds houses for families and helps ladies who need help." Sarah's chest tightened with pride so fierce it was almost painful. The teacher smiled warmly. "That's wonderful. What exactly does your mama do?" "She makes homes that people can afford to live in, and she helps women who are scared because bad people hurt them. And she says being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared." Sarah's own words coming back to her. Lessons she'd taught Emily over 5 years of bedtime stories and difficult conversations and quiet moments when her daughter asked why she didn't have a daddy like other kids. Davis Property Group now operated 8 major developments across South Carolina. 1,600 families housed in affordable quality homes. Portfolio worth $140 million and growing steadily. The Elizabeth Davis Foundation had helped 340 women escape financial abuse over 5 years. Legal representation provided, job training funded, emergency resources deployed, new lives built from the ashes of old ones. Sarah had written testimony from 47 women saying the foundation had literally saved their lives, given them resources to leave when they thought leaving was impossible. Her phone buzzed. Text from Angela. FYI. Daniel tried another appeal. Denied again. Also got 2 more years added for attempting to bribe a prison guard. Now looking at 20 total. He'll be 61 if he gets out. Sarah felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. No lingering anger. Daniel Rodriguez had become completely irrelevant to her life. She never thought about him anymore, never wondered about him, never cared what happened to him. He'd become what he deserved to be, nothing. Another text. Patricia this time. Melissa's parole hearing next month. DA wants your victim impact statement by Friday. Sarah opened her notes app, started typing with quick, certain fingers. Melissa Clark conspired to murder me when I was 8 months pregnant with my daughter. She celebrated my suffering, wore my clothes, planned to raise my child after killing me. She has shown no genuine remorse, only regret at being caught. I do not forgive her. I do not wish her well. I want her to serve her full sentence as ordered by the court. Justice delayed is justice denied. Keep her in prison where she belongs. She sent it to Patricia. Watched Emily disappear into the school building, chattering excitedly with a new friend. That night a developer offered $22 million for one of the affordable housing sites, wanted to convert it to luxury condominiums. Christopher knocked on Sarah's office door late. "You've been staring at this proposal for over an hour. What's the problem?" "It's a good offer financially, really good. But 300 families live there right now. Teachers, nurses, firefighters, single mothers working 2 jobs. If we sell, they get displaced. Charleston rents have gone up 40% in 5 years. They won't be able to afford anywhere else in the city." "So you're saying no?" "We don't build affordable housing so we can sell it to the highest bidder 5 years later for maximum profit." Sarah closed the proposal firmly. "We build it because people desperately need it. Because housing is a human right, not just a commodity to be traded. Tell them no. That site is not for sale." Christopher smiled, the same smile he'd been wearing since the day Sarah gave him a choice: change completely or leave. You're changing this entire industry. You already have, but you're just getting started. Sarah worked until well past midnight, came home to find Emily asleep and William reading in the living room. How was her first day of real school? Absolutely perfect. She made 3 new friends. Her teacher says she's already reading at a second-grade level, and apparently she told the entire class that her mama is a superhero who helps people. Sarah laughed. I'm definitely not a superhero. To her you are. Honestly, to me too. William closed his book. You took the absolute worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something that helps hundreds of people build better lives. If that's not heroic, I genuinely don't know what is. I got an invitation today to speak at the Women in Business conference next month. They want me to tell my full story. Are you going to do it? I don't know. Part of me wants to just move forward, stop being defined by what Daniel did to me 5 years ago. You're not defined by what he did. William's voice was firm. You're defined by how you responded, by what you built from the ashes he left behind. He paused. And there are women out there right now sitting in marriages exactly like yours was, thinking they can't leave, thinking they're completely trapped. If you tell your story, even just one of them might find the courage to get out. Isn't that worth reliving it one more time? Sarah thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago, standing in the rain, believing her life was over, certain she'd lost everything. I'll do it, she decided. I'll speak. The Women in Business conference took place 3 weeks later. 2,000 attendees packed into the Charleston Convention Center. Executives, entrepreneurs, students, women at every stage of their careers. Sarah was the keynote speaker. She stood backstage, heart-pounding, hands actually shaking. Emily was in the audience with William. Angela and Patricia sat in the front row. Christopher had come to show support. The moderator introduced her, recited credentials. CEO of Davis Property Group, founder of the Elizabeth Davis Foundation, named one of Charleston's top 40 under 40, featured in Forbes for innovative approaches to affordable housing. But those weren't the accomplishments Sarah was here to discuss. She walked onto the stage, 2,000 pairs of eyes fixed on her. The room fell completely silent. 5 years ago, I stood in freezing rain at midnight, 8 months pregnant, wearing nothing but a nightgown. My husband had just thrown me into the street for his mistress. I had no phone, no money, no shoes. I genuinely believed my life was completely over. She paused. Let that image settle over the audience. What I didn't know that night was that my husband had stolen $9 million from my trust fund, that he'd forged my signature 17 times, that he'd taken out $8 million in fraudulent life insurance policies and was actively waiting for a convenient accident during my high-risk pregnancy. Audible gasps rippled through the audience. I didn't marry a millionaire. I created one. Every single dollar of his $87 million empire came from money he stole from me, from my grandmother's hard-earned legacy, from the inheritance that was supposed to protect me. Sarah's voice was steady. She'd practiced this speech dozens of times. I'm not here to tell you I was strong throughout this ordeal. I wasn't. I was absolutely terrified. I cried myself to sleep every single night for months. I doubted myself constantly. I wondered if I was making the right choices, if I had the strength to actually fight him, if I was being vindictive instead of just. She looked out at the sea of faces watching her, but I had something he didn't count on. I had people. My father, who never once doubted me. My best friend, who dug through financial records for weeks to find the evidence I needed. My lawyer, who fought brutal battles in courtrooms across this state. My daughter, who gave me an unshakable reason to keep going when I desperately wanted to give up. And I had myself, the woman I'd forgotten I was, the woman Daniel had spent 7 years systematically trying to make me forget, the corporate attorney who graduated top of her class, the granddaughter of a woman who survived the Great Depression, the person who was always so much stronger than anyone, including myself, gave me credit for. She took a deep breath. If you're in a relationship where someone controls your finances, that is abuse. If someone makes you constantly doubt your own perceptions and memories, that is gaslighting. If you feel like you're perpetually walking on eggshells, desperately afraid to upset them, that is not love. That is control. And if you're thinking right now that you can't leave, that you don't have the resources, that you're completely trapped, you are wrong. There are organizations that help. There are people who will fight for you. There is always a way out. The Elizabeth Davis Foundation logo appeared on the screen behind her. Contact information, resources, hotlines staffed 24 hours a day. We've helped 340 women in the past 5 years. Women who thought they were hopelessly trapped. Women who believed leaving was completely impossible. Every single one of them made it out alive, built new lives, found their own strength. You can too. You are stronger than you think, braver than you know, and you are absolutely not alone in this fight. The room erupted in thunderous applause. Not polite conference applause. Real, sustained, standing ovation applause that went on and on. Sarah saw women openly crying, saw them frantically reaching for their phones, saw them turning to friends beside them, whispering urgently. She'd reached someone, maybe dozens of someones, maybe hundreds, and that made every painful memory worth reliving one more time. After the speech, Sarah was surrounded by women waiting to thank her, to shake her hand, to tell their own stories. One woman, maybe 50 years old, grabbed both of Sarah's hands tightly. "I've been married 32 years. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was losing my mind. Thank you for showing me I'm not crazy." Another woman, younger, barely out of college. "My boyfriend controls all our money. Says it's because I'm terrible with finances. But I have a degree in accounting from USC. You just made me realize what's actually been happening." On and on, story after story, woman after woman, each one a stark reminder that Sarah's experience wasn't unique or rare, that financial abuse was epidemic, that so many women were trapped in situations they didn't even have the language to name. Emily ran up and hugged Sarah's legs tightly. "Mama, you made all the people cry." Sarah picked up her daughter, held her close. "Sometimes people cry when they're happy, sweetheart, or when they realize something really important, or when they hear something they desperately needed to hear." "Did you say something important?" "I told them the truth about what happened to us, and about how we're completely okay now. Better than okay, actually." That evening over pasta at their favorite restaurant, William raised his water glass in a toast. "To Sarah, for being brave enough to tell your story publicly, for helping people who desperately need it, for showing Emily exactly what real strength looks like. To Mama." Emily lifted her juice box enthusiastically. "The absolute bravest person in the entire world." Sarah clinked her glass against theirs. "To family, the one you're born into and the one you choose. To surviving the unsurvivable. To building something genuinely better from the ruins." On the drive home, Sarah's phone buzzed with an email from the conference organizer. "We've received 847 inquiries to the Elizabeth Davis Foundation hotline since your speech this afternoon. Women asking for help, asking for resources, asking if they can really leave their situations. I wanted you to know you changed lives today. You probably saved some. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. 847 women in just 6 hours. William read the email over her shoulder, looked at his daughter with pride so fierce it made her eyes sting. "Your grandmother would be so incredibly proud. Your mother would be so proud. I am so proud I can barely find words for it. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Dad. Not a single part of it." "Yes, you could have. You're stronger than you've ever realized. You always have been. I just helped you remember that strength when you'd forgotten it." They drove through quiet Charleston streets, past the house on Laguerre Street that Sarah had sold 3 years ago, past the gas station where Donna had given her a blanket and a phone and kindness, past the hospital where Emily was born into chaos, past all the landmarks of the worst night of her life, now transformed into waypoints on a journey towards something immeasurably better. Emily fell asleep in her car seat. Sarah carried her inside up to her room, tucked her into bed with practiced, gentle movements. "I love you, Mama." Emily mumbled, half asleep already. "I love you too, baby." more than all the stars in the entire sky. Sarah stood at Emily's door for a long moment, watching her daughter sleep peacefully. This perfect, brave, brilliant child who'd been born into absolute chaos but was growing up in hard-won peace and safety. She thought about the 847 women who'd reached out today, wondered how many would find the courage to leave their situations, how many would build new lives, how many would discover their own hidden strength. She thought about Daniel, 61 years old, if he actually survived his full sentence, about Melissa, currently serving year 6 of 12. She thought about the company she'd built from stolen ashes, the foundation bearing her grandmother's name, the legacy she was creating for Emily and for hundreds of other women. And she thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago, standing barefoot in the freezing rain, believing with absolute certainty that she'd lost everything that mattered. That woman would be so proud of who Sarah had become. Sarah closed Emily's door quietly, went to her own room, stood at the window looking out at the Charleston night. It was raining again, soft, steady, the kind of rain that would last all night and into tomorrow. She didn't flinch, didn't feel fear, didn't remember the cold or the pain or the absolute certainty that her life was ending. She just felt peaceful, complete, free. The rain had taken everything from her once, and in taking absolutely everything, it had somehow given her everything back. She was Sarah Davis, survivor, fighter, builder, mother, woman who'd been broken into pieces and put herself back together stronger than before. And she was free, freer than she'd ever been with Daniel beside her, freer than she'd been in all the years before she met him, free in a way that could only come from having nothing, losing even more than nothing, and discovering that she still had herself. That had always been enough. That would always be enough. Sarah climbed into bed, pulled up the warm covers, closed her eyes. Outside, the rain continued to fall steadily, washing the city clean, watering the gardens, filling the rivers that flowed inevitably to the sea. Inside, Sarah slept deeply and dreamlessly, without fear, without regret, without nightmares, because she'd learned the most important lesson life could possibly teach. You are not what happened to you. You are not the lies someone told about you. You are not the money they stole. You are the strength you found when everything fell completely apart. You are the woman who stood back up. You are the future you built with your own 2 hands, and that is worth more than any empire could ever be.